My father had Parkinson's disease. He was diagnosed very early in the diagnoses. I was surprised he got a diagnosis so early. He had very minimal symptoms. This is atypical. And he had it for 17 years. The first 10 years, he had some decline, but he was being seen by a great doctor. He was under good care. It wasn't until the later years when the dementia affected him, which is something that can happen with Parkinson's, but does not always. The last years were really challenging as my mom cared for him, and then we found another option. And my dad would say to us, why am I still here? When things had gotten that bad, the quality of life had gone downhill. He couldn't even enjoy playing cards like he used to. His memory was that bad, his follow through with things. He could still get around for the most part, although his medications had to be cut back because of his psychiatric symptoms, as far as his hallucinations and paranoia and that. So that slowed his movement down when the carbidopa, levodopa had to be cut back because of those side effects that he was having. And we moved my dad to a assisted living memory care close to my house. He was there for his last several months of life. And my sister, he'd always wanted to talk to me and my brother and sister together. Well, my sister runs a business. She's 3 hours from us. My brother's in Pennsylvania. We're in North Carolina. And so shortly after he moved in there, we all came down to visit. And we spent time with me, my brother, my sister, and my dad. We went out on the patio where he was living and had just the three of us. And it was touching. It was really nice to spend that time. And afterwards, my sister, gifted with words, turned the experience sort of into a poem. And then she had this friend's daughter who wanted to put it to music. And I'd like to share that with you now. Many of the lyrics of this are things my father had said.
It's a difficult journey, others might know, watching and wincing as the villain takes hold. It's like an invasion he didn't invite, his ghosts and demons whispering lies. Help, I'm a hostage, he said to the man. We're trying our best to map out a plan, frustrated and helpless, adrift on this boat. Time's taking its time while the flicker dims low. Are you real or an illusion? He asked me today. I squeezed his hand, wiped a tear away. It's hard to process, it's painful to watch as he sits in his chair, a hostage of loss. Help, I'm a hostage, he said to the man. We're trying our best to map out a plan, frustrated and helpless, adrift on this boat. Time's taking its time while the flicker dims low. The meal on his plate, the event of the day. Aside from the weather, not much to say. He wants to go home, he just wants to leave, but there's no turning back from this wicked disease. What did I do to deserve this, he said. Where are my keys? That is in my bed. Occasional glimmers of memories and light, mostly by daytime, rarely at night. Help, I'm a hostage, he said to the man. We're trying our best to map out a plan, frustrated and helpless, adrift on this boat. Time's taking its time while the flicker dims low. I look into his eyes as they wander away, from the start. He'd never be the same. Yes, he's a hostage, his brain under siege. Is his freedom the ransom for this awful disease? The meal on his plate, the event today. Aside from the weather, not much to say. He wants to go home, he wants to go home. He just wants to leave, but there's no turning back from this wicked disease.
Hello, this is Don.
And this is Gina with Focused Healthy Family. This is podcast number 207, and we're talking about facing feelings. And today we're going to focus on our aging loved ones.
We hope to run this in a series too. We hope to, over the next couple of months, to look at the emotions of all the different people in the family. You know, we talk about, we used to talk a lot about OCD, and when you get something happening in the family, not just one person gets affected by it, the whole family does. Well,
Sure.
this is kind of the same thing. When you have somebody that's aging and going through that journey, the emotions that we all go through get affected. And so right now we're going to talk about the aging loved one, but we're going to take this on through the next couple of months and add.
Look for more Facing Feelings podcasts. And I'm going to share a tip. This is from Caregiving, my hands on 101 by Mike Collins. It's called 101 Ways to Keep Caregiving from Making You Crazy. And this tip number 60 is create a haven. Find a place in your home in which you can relax. Surround yourself with pictures, books, keepsakes, and anything that has a positive meaning for you. Even if it is only a corner in your room, create a small haven in your home to which you can retreat and relax. So that little green chair in the corner of our bedroom, Don, that you don't like because it sits real low, but I love it because it sits low. I have some on the side of the dresser. I have some memorabilia things and some special candle and things that I have sitting there. And sometimes I get frustrated because that's the same space you'll use if people are in the house, to do your calls and your EFT sessions. And you'll set your notebooks down, and I'm like, there's stuff scattered on my sacred little space here.
Well,
do you have a special place you go to relax, Don?
To relax. It's hard because I used to love your parents' house because it had so many spaces to go to. I think mine's the garage. My man space, in a way. But
when we moved in here, you went out there and you put shelves up and you painted and got it organized and redid the workbench that was out there. And
well, mine tends to be when I find those times to do something, I tend to think about what I could be doing, things I could be doing, some work stuff, but also just fun stuff. I think about what I could do in the garage or what I could do at the house or something like that. So, but lately I've been going a little deeper into myself, and we've talked about that. I start doing these every morning, doing some writing and stuff that helps me to focus on myself. But
so, is there a place in the house that you most like to relax? I know you're not a fan of that word.
Yeah. I mean, I think our living room, I love our living room. It's so big.
Okay.
That's probably like my chair. I have my chair.
It was my dad's chair. Yeah.
But
you like that chair?
Yeah. Before we go on, though, I have a couple jokes for you. Let me get them back up here. So, you ready for this?
I'm ready.
What's the secret to having a smoking hot body in old age?
What's the secret to having a smoking hot body? I don't know. Hopefully it's nothing to do with smoking.
Cremation. What is a prize old people can win for aging?
I don't know. What's a prize they can win?
A trophy? Let's see. Let's do one more. What's the best part of old age?
What's the best part of old age?
that it doesn't last very long. That's a
You
little
had
sick one there, I
did you
think.
share this fun one with me the other day that I told my spouse that I wanted to be cremated, and they made an appointment for me for
Oh yeah,
Tuesday.
it was on Facebook. Ah, okay.
So we have to lighten up, right? We have to find things and ways that we can laugh. And dealing with feelings and accepting feelings, I think, is huge. We've talked about this when we talked about raising children, using respectful language, and allowing them to have their feelings. Yeah, and as Don said, the whole family. Our podcast has always been about caring for the whole family. And so whether it's an aging loved one or, maybe you're just dealing with your own issues, your children, whatever, people that are in your life. But yeah, it affects everyone as a whole. So today, looking at the aging loved one. So the beautiful song that we shared, the lyrics by my sister, just the feelings that my father had. Just his frustration in the process of the disease. Um, Parkinson's is a
What was that?
progressive, debilitating disease. I couldn't get that word out. So it's a progressive neurological disorder. So unfortunately, it gets worse over time. Like Alzheimer's, like other most forms of dementia, other things that are progressive, multiple sclerosis, things like that, that just you unfortunately know that it will get a little worse. And to the degree you don't know, I know my dad talked about earlier on in Parkinson's, is he going to get to the point where he can't do anything and he's just laying there? And we didn't know exactly what his full journey would look like. But just imagining those fears he had. And then as things did get worse for him, he had all this time in the world to think about all of this. But yet his brain wasn't fully able to process things. And I remember this was probably a month or two before he passed. It was kind of like this prepping stage, getting him settled. He knew we were moving my mom, and he would just say things that were. And I told him mom was moving in a month or something, and he said that's too far away. Like he wanted everyone settled, I think, before he was ready to leave this world. And this was shortly before all that happened. He said to me, how did he phrase this? Something about, how do they know when you're dead, that you're fully dead? And the way he phrased it was a little confusing. And at first I thought he meant as far as, he was going to end his life. And he said, no, he wasn't going to do that. But I picked up on the essence that he was worried that they would bury him before he was dead. Like he wanted to know for certain, are they going to double check and to know, factually. And it took me a little bit as he was phrasing it to me. And I thought about it. And it makes me think of patients I've worked with and their loved one, says, I'm done. I'm ready for the other side. I want to go, see my partner. And their family members are like, no, don't say that. You have to keep living. You got more life in you, and I've seen people say this to their 95-year-old mother, and accepting death, right? It's part of living. It's part of being human and being okay with the feelings that they're having. And that can be a very difficult thing to do when your loved one is talking about not wanting to live anymore. How do we handle this? Do we jump in and say, no, don't think that way? Don't say that. Stop talking like that, which unfortunately I see a lot of.
Well, I think, I think we go further back in the way we think about we don't want to lose what we had as a young child. I mean, because what we were going through with your dad was tough, and wasn't. So I think we're more thinking about wanting him to be around for what used to be and not for what is right now for him. So I think that's part of our deal, our issues. But well, just real quick, I said I looked up some of the emotions that we go through as we get older. And these are the ones that came up for me. And I'll go through them real quickly and then we'll talk about each one. But fear, of course, is the first one. Grief and sadness. This is for aging loved one, I should say. Anger or frustration, shame or embarrassment, anxiety, loneliness, and loss of identity.
Mm.
So, fear is losing your independence. That to me seems like one of the big ones, just, it goes back to that taking the keys away kind of thing, and
I,
how it shrinks the world back down for you.
I deal with this every day. I work in geriatric senior rehab care, and I currently work in an independent living facility. So some of the care is preventative, but it's also, after someone falls, after someone's been in the hospital. And yeah, that not being able to drive anymore is huge because it is a big sense of independence. And, we've had to let family members know, your loved one needs more care. They're not managing their medication well. They really need some support for that. And I've heard resistance on both ends from the family member and the person I'm working with that, they want to be able to continue to do that. They don't want someone else to just
Yeah.
come in. As simple as, providing medications. There was a woman, um, she was getting alcohol and her son took the car away. Well, flash forward a year or so, she bought a car from another person. This other gentleman realized, I don't need to drive anymore. And she wanted a car. And so she went ahead and somehow they managed to do all the paperwork to purchase this car before her son even knew anything about it. And so, yeah, that fear of losing that sense of independence. And, when I work with someone as an occupational therapist, the goal is to help them to be as independent and safe as possible. So, when I work in the nursing home and someone's there for short term rehab, they want to take themselves to the bathroom. And I say, okay, that's like the first goal. Right now, we want you to call for help. There are laws in place in nursing homes about falls. And so they really have to be extra cautious with that. And so they really need to be cleared, usually by the therapist, to be safe to take themselves either with a wheelchair or with a walker. And so I try to focus it on the positive that we're working towards that. We're not there yet. All these things we're going to do with you, these exercises, all the stuff is all about helping you to regain that.
Well, I just talking with I have all my siblings are older, and they're all slowly kind of slipping into this place themselves. And talking with my brother Vern, and he was talking about his eyesight now. He's getting double vision. He said, I could drive, but I have to turn my head sideways to go anywhere. So he really can't drive again. So he's starting to lose that. He loved to bike ride, and he can't. He used to. He used to literally ride like 30 to 40 miles in a, and he's cutting all that back because he can't do it because of he does what's it, myasthenia gravis.
Myasthenia gravis he has.
And and it's just really causing him a lot of problems, and I think he's having to give up a lot of that independence.
So yeah, and even those without dementia, I see people with low vision, often macular degeneration, which has caused deterioration of the vision, and really can lead to blindness. People have to come to realize when they need extra help with things, when they can no longer drive or attend to other things. I was working with this one woman, and we do all these things to adapt for someone with low vision, and yet medication bottles, everything is tiny. And the part that I like on the bottle is where it tells you what this pill looks like. It tells you the shape, the color, and what's written on it. But that is printed so tiny on those bottles. I mean, I've got to get up real close to see it. And why don't we have better labels printed for people? All these things can add to frustration, can add to those fear, the grief, the sadness, anxiety over having to deal with this.
Well, and it talks about shame and embarrassment. I mean, you know, you want to be able to read these things, and if you can't, you have to ask somebody else. One of the notes that I saw here, it printed out for me, was often expressed through behavior rather than words, withdrawal, irritability, resistance, control, all that kind of stuff. And you're talking about, like I say, if you can't read that bottle, you might just take it without asking anybody, and which is not good either. So yeah, it goes into that embarrassment part of just not wanting to show your signs of aging, your signs of different problems that you have.
Another story. My dad was in rehab several different times over the course of the past, I don't know, 6, 7 years, from when he had back surgery and other things. And the one time he was at a rehab place, um, they were doing an assessment. Oh, I know. And me and my mom were there. It was caregiver training. So they were showing us how he transfers and walks. And so he saw it as a test. And she asked him to get up from here and walk across there. And he was just moving as fast as possible. Like he thought that was the way to show off. Like, look, I can do this. And he jumped up out of the chair and he walked across the room and he sat where they wanted him to. And I'm just like shaking my head, knowing he's in show off mode, but he doesn't realize that being quick and fast is not safe. That's not how to be safe. But it was almost like he went into performance mode, or whenever a therapist came in general to assess him, he would really try his hardest. And I think that has to do, with shame and just pride. Here people are showing you how to stand up and walk, and imagine, what's that's like. And not. I remember when you came home from the hospital when you were at the old house and talking about our bathroom was up half a flight of stairs and you were recovering from a heart attack and your endurance was so low, and you didn't think it would be a big deal to walk up the stairs.
Yeah, I remember the first time going up there and got up there, and I thought I was going to die when I got up there. That was yeah. So yeah, we get into that change. Well, we've walked most of our lives, and now they're telling us we can't. That's embarrassing. They talk about anger and frustration, and that has a lot to it. What what do you think the one of the big reason that people get angry about when they're aging?
Well, we're all different types of people, and how we handle our feelings varies from person to person and across families. And so someone who's not used to dealing with feelings to begin with, and now all of a sudden, their children are stepping in. I've had people say, my daughter thinks she's my parent and I'm still the mother, and having other people telling them what to do. I had some clients who, I don't know the full picture. I wasn't there, but what I'm gathering is she was in rehab. They told them, you got to move out of the house. They packed up a bunch of their things in storage and moved them into this independent living environment. And they didn't have much say so in what items went and what didn't go. It happened so quickly and so fast that they didn't get a say in it. And that can cause a lot of resentment and anger and create a challenge with the relationship and that dynamic. It depending on what kind of relationship existed before, the person is having issues as they're getting older. How does that look then? When now they're needing more help and they're having to deal with you and you taking me to appointments, and there's that sense of pride. We have some gentlemen. There's one that's 94. He's a veteran and he just wants to take care of everybody else. And he's got some dementia and he's got his own health problems. And yet he's the first to jump in and take care of other people. And I've talked to we had a speech language pathologist who got to work with us briefly before she moved. She talked about how, him and some other people, they needed a job. They needed to feel like they have purpose. They needed something to do. And as an occupational therapist, engaging in purposeful activity is a big part of what OT really is. And so, yeah, how can they have purpose? I loved my dad went to a adult daycare center. It was a Montessori based care. So if you're any familiar with Montessori education, it's following their lead, giving them options, with their learning. So this is how this daycare center operated. You could bring your loved one there. They could stay a half day, full day. And they literally found out what everybody's interests were. Someone who liked to paint, they had things set up that they could go and paint. They had a quiet room. My dad could lay down and put on his favorite music. They did different activities. They brought in people that did exercise classes, but they also gave them some freedom to kind of go about and do their own things. They also ran it as sort of a cooperative almost, that they talked about. I don't know if they called it a board, but they had people and they had meetings and they discussed things. They were involved in setting up for meals and cleaning up. And so they were very much a part of the community and not just being taken care of. But like my dad felt like he had a purpose there. Like he didn't see it as daycare per se, or at least that's not how I perceived him seeing it. And so giving them a sense of having a sense of purpose, because yeah, just imagine how frustrating it is. Don, you can speak to this after you had your stroke and you couldn't get your words out. I mean,
Yeah, it's very frustrated. Well, and you think you're getting it out right, but it comes out completely different too. Is it was part of it too, and yeah, you get very well, and it gets well, again. It's the same thing because you know you can get it out. At least I would had that sense. Now, not as you get older, you start to lose some of that sense too. But I knew what I was supposed to get out, but I couldn't get it out, and yeah,
and it was a lot more than just forgetting a word here and there. It was the actual
putting
words of
them
what you wanted
together.
to say. I know one night we were having kale for dinner because you were quite capable of cooking and making the items, but telling people the words, the language.
I still have a little problem with that. I'll still look at something and say it's kale and it's really broccoli or whatever it is. But
And to speak to your own feelings on that, um, sometimes your family kind of laughs at your
yeah,
frustration. And if you
sometimes
want to
that
take a minute to just let us know how that feels for you.
it feels it makes me feel kind of stupid. Like I don't, I know this, and it does get to me sometimes. Some of the things that they say, and they're not being. I can put it in the back of my mind, say it's okay that they're my family. They're not doing this to hurt me, but it still does affect me a lot of times.
So, what feelings do you experience? You're trying to justify them, but
Um, Well, it's well, like I say, feeling very stupid, feeling very, not smart enough, not, to be able to get the words out right. And I should be much further along than this. I'm 67 years old. I should be able to,
so you're frustrated with yourself
yeah,
and you have, some anger at your family, um,
yeah.
for
Some
letting you
sadness
be.
too that, will I ever be able to really get past this? Will it, most people don't know that I have some of these cognitive deficits going on, and I don't. So I don't want to embarrass myself in front of other people. I mean, most of the time I'm able to catch it pretty quickly and change it. Um, so yeah, it is frustrating.
So you mentioned something earlier, looking at behavior, especially if we're talking about a loved one who has issues with communication, whether it's, language issues from a stroke or something else, or whether it's some dementia related issues. They might not be able to express their feelings, but how they act, their behavior, we need to tune into that because the behavior is the language we need to pay attention to, and we can pick up on that to understand that frustration. And that takes just a little bit of patience. Um, you know, I got lots of stories with my dad. Um, he was at a rehab facility one time and he had all this paranoia after his back surgeries. His cognition would just flare up with paranoia and hallucinations, delusions. and he thought people were trying to hurt him. And one time he took a tray of food, threw it across the room. He picked up his walker and smashed a window because he felt like he needed to get out or needed to get attention enough. And the police came, and that was really comforting to him. Because he felt like he was trapped. And he talked about this even afterwards. That he had to get someone's attention because they weren't listening to him. I think this kind of he had wanted to call my mom, and it was like 3 or 4 in the morning. And this was the first night that she didn't stay with him, but we had a caregiver there that we paid for. And she tried to talk him into, we don't want to call her. It's 3 in the morning or whatever. And so that was his frustration. He literally physically acted out and felt like that's what he had to do to get the attention he needed to get out of there. He didn't feel safe with that facility. And these kind of things happened in other ways. He would run out the door when he was at home with my mom. And, so those behaviors were about him not feeling safe, about him wanting help, feeling trapped.
Do you think, I don't know with your dad, because one of the things is loneliness. Do you think, I never saw that in your dad as far as feeling lonely, somehow missing somebody. I missed your mom, but do you really feel like he felt that kind of loneliness in what he did?
Oh, yeah. I remember we were busy with things and hadn't been down to visit them in a while. This is when they were still 45 minutes from us. And I came to visit, I know. My mom said, Gina's coming to visit. And he said, Gina, who? And that was his sarcastic way of, saying my kids don't come enough. Yeah, I think he had a lot of loneliness, especially when COVID happened. They were part of a very active 55 plus community, and they had a community center. Had a golf cart he could drive. He went to play cards. They were involved in all these activities. And when COVID, it shut all that down. They stopped all those activities. And it was very isolating. And yeah, because he loved people. He loved being around people. He loved playing cards with people. And now all of a sudden, you're not allowed to do any of that. Yeah, I know that contributed to that sense of loneliness. There's so many, many days it was just him and my mom. And he always liked when family came and when we got together.
Well, I got a kick out of, like I say, my oldest siblings. My oldest brother was, I guess he was about 74, I guess, when he went into the rehab. But come to find out that he had a girlfriend there, for a long time. And you don't think about that, but I guess that's part of the loneliness factor too, just being connected to somebody, because she was quite a bit older than he was. But they enjoyed each other's company. I'm not sure what else they might have done, but
yeah. So yeah, that feeling of loneliness and loss. The last months of my dad's life, especially, it just that far away look in his eyes.
mm,
I'm sure there is that loss of what he can no longer do anymore. The I'm just looking through these other lists, but yeah, it's hard to think about, and just we need to stop because when we're in the middle of caring for someone, right, it's messy. If you are the direct caregiver for someone, even if you're not living with them and you're taking them to doctor's appointments, you're filling up their pill case for their medications, you're making sure that different things are in place for them, whatever it is your role is. And if you live with them, that's even more, that it can be hard to step back and say, wait a minute, what's going on here? Teepa Snow is awesome. And listening to some of her videos, she talks about communicating with people with dementia, and we really do need to take a step back. Think about when your kids are young and you become angry with them and frustrated. They do something, they break something, they do something, act out, have a tantrum. That the best thing we can do is breathe a minute and step back from the situation.
well, I think what happens is, when they're young like that, it's they don't know any better kind of thing, you know. And so when they get older, I think we think, well, they know better than that, and you know, and we kind of we don't really think about them reverting back to kind of that almost kind of like childhood kind of place. And
And yet they're not a child.
no,
I
no,
had somebody shared with me recently about how they felt like people talked down to them.
yeah,
They felt like they were being talked to like a child, and they didn't like that. And we talked about respect and how it is important. And I feel, sometimes I don't like the way people talk to children because I don't think we should talk down to anyone. But we need to treat people with respect and, talking to them given their abilities and such. But an adult with dementia, they're not a child. Yes, you might be in charge now and be taking responsibility for things and need to be firm and direct. Yet they're a valid human being and they have lived and had all these past experiences. My dad, in his driving, he became convinced that he was going to pass a driver's test and be able to drive again. And he's like, I've been driving longer than the rest of you. And, I'm better than most of these drivers out there. And yeah, he probably was a better driver than some people, a number of people on the roads, but because of his deficits, his vision, his reaction time, his all kinds of things, he was no longer safe to drive. And we knew that. And we had to take him to a rehab where they do a driving assessment. It's an occupational therapist that looks at visual perceptual skills and, all these different areas. And, he didn't pass. And yet in his mind, he'd been driving a long time. And
yeah.
why are they telling me I can't drive? I've been driving before they were born. And I'm just recognizing that, and I guess I was pretty patient with him because I was assisting my mom in his care. I took him, um, I went, picked him up and drove down to the place and we talked before we went. I said, okay, Dad, if he had this plan to buy a sports car. He had had one before, but I said, so what's plan B if you don't pass? What, then what? What can we do? Can we have someone drive you to the places you want to go? Where is it you really want to go? Where is it what you want to be able to do? Um, and so kind of reflecting on that. So it was a bit of a sad journey on the way home because then he was frustrated because he's like, I didn't have time to study for this test, and he got wrapped up in the orientation questions as far as what day of the week it was and those kinds of things that, and yet that was such a small portion of the whole assessment. And, well, I'm going off in driving and things like that, but just be able to say, yeah, it really sucks. This Parkinson's disease, you've got all these things going on and it's, your body's not functioning the way it used to. And that must really suck. I wish too that you could drive and still be driving your super around. I'm so sorry.
Well, something I'm starting to kind of learn too is coming from a distance. My relatives are quite a distance from us, and I when I first talked with my sister, when actually she really started losing it, where conversations didn't make any sense. It was tough for me to do it at first, but then the last time I talked to her, I said, I've got to just let it go, whatever she wants to talk about, however she wants to go. And I actually made her laugh and talk, and that made me feel good because, like I said, that's part of that respect of wherever she's at, just be right there with her, and not talk down to her, not hang up on her, just let her talk
No,
how
that's
she
not
wants to.
true. She asked you about your mom who's been gone now for 20 years almost. Um,
What do you mean?
your sister asked you, is mom with you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I
Not correcting her, not,
yeah, I just said, no, she's not here with me right now. No, and then she kind of went on like, well, everybody else tells me she's gone. And I'm not sure whether she really knows what gone means, but and then she would want to go to the place where she's staying because she she was worried about how they were treating her at I guess at the nursing facility she was at one
because she was
time.
the one who cared for her. I
Yeah,
mean, she
yeah,
found that place for her and she was there like nearly every day.
yeah. right up the street from her.
And
'Cause
that's literally been almost, 20 years ago. So yeah. So we've got to step back a little bit and look at behaviors and how people are acting and realize there's different personalities, right? We all have different ways of handling things. And we've got to set our own biases aside.
yeah,
Maybe we've been frustrated with our parent most of our lives, and now they're dealing with dementia and they're saying things and doing things that are aggravating us, and taking a little bit of time to just honor that their feelings and their frustration. You're really angry right now. I can tell you're really upset. I want to help you with this, but right now you're so angry. How can I support you? And sometimes you have to just, okay, you're really mad right now. I want to be able to talk to you about this, but I think we need to talk again another time. Sometimes you have to end the conversation or step away or shift gears, which could be really tough if you're right there in the house, and finding a way to do so respectfully, not just hanging up the phone on somebody
yeah,
or slamming the door
yeah.
and leaving. You're really angry right now. Maybe we can talk when you're calmer, right? So think about your loved one, what could be going on for them. And maybe they don't want to talk about these things, but just sitting quietly with them and accepting, watching something you enjoy together. Some people like watching sad shows or funny things, or just having that time with them and just that understanding. So we invite you to think about these things with anybody in your life and what feelings they might be experiencing, and especially when it deals with aging and frustrations they could be having.
Holding on to that respect, like you said. So
Yeah, right. We all want to be treated with respect. And
so
how would we want to be treated? And maybe how they want to be treated is different than how we'd want to be treated.
so that's our podcast for today. And at Focus Healthy Family, we truly hope that our conversation was helpful and maybe gave you something that you meaningful to take away today. We'd love to hear from you. Please take a moment to leave us a comment, share your thoughts. Be sure to like us, subscribe, and also if you know somebody that this could be helpful for, share the podcast with them. If you're finding it difficult to stay calm during the day, or panic and overwhelm are becoming more frequent for you, we invite you to explore my discovery series. EFT is usually described as being weird, but after a few sessions, the reaction shifts from "Wow, wait, tapping does what?" to "Wow, look what EFT did for me." And if you're navigating the challenges of caring for another aging loved one, be sure to visit our senior care page on our website for support, resources, and guidance. You can also find our wellness tips, caregiving insights, and more helpful tools at focusedhealthyfamily.com. You can connect with us on social media, at Facebook at Focus Healthy Family, Instagram at Focus Healthy Family 1, YouTube at Focus Healthy Family, and join us every Thursday as we put out a podcast in the morning at Focus Healthy Family Podcast. You can find it more on focusedhealthyfamilypodcast.com, or listen on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube. And remember, how you speak to your children and your loved ones today shapes their future and yours.